is a rhetorical question. I apologize. But what was prison like for you? What was
It's
your
hell.
experience?
It's not a good place. It's the most abnormal environment ever created on earth.
Welcome back to Advocacy Alchemy with Professor Ross. Today we have a good one, guys. Imagine spending 25 years in a cage for a crime you didn't commit. Because the people sworn to protect you allegedly swapped the evidence, you finally get out. The state gives you a check to say, well, we're sorry. And then years later, guess what? They sue you to get the money back. This isn't a movie. This is the reality for Mr. Desmond Ricks. Today we're diving into a heartbreaking and legally complex ruling from the Michigan Court of Appeals that just dropped on December 22nd, 2025. We're talking about double recovery and why the law sometimes feels like it's taking back justice that it just gave to you. So with that, let's jump in, guys.
A man who spent a quarter century behind bars for a murder he was wrongfully convicted of has now been ordered to repay more than $1 million to the state. It is part of a Court of Appeals decision after a separate lawsuit paid him more than $7 million. This is a story I have been following for years. Back in 2017, our cameras were rolling as Desmond Ricks learned he would be released from prison. And today I talked with his former attorney and a state lawmaker in response to this latest move by judges. For roughly 25 years, Desmond Ricks was an inmate in state prison where he always maintained his innocence for the crime of murder. And then in 2017, a judge ordering his release, finding he had been wrongfully convicted. Ricks was among those who received $50,000 a year for every year of incarceration under the state's Wrongful Imprisonment Compensation Act, also known as WICA. For Ricks, it amounted to $1.25 million from the state.
Desmond Ricks endured the worst kind of harm and suffering you can imagine.
One of his attorneys at the time was Wolf Mueller.
25 years in a cage for a crime he did not commit. The compensation under the state, which was $1.25 million, doesn't come close to the harm that he suffered.
Ricks then won over $7.5 million in a lawsuit against the city of Detroit that accused the detectives on his case of corruption. That's when the state wanted him to repay their $1.25 million to the WICA fund. The law requires that payback is done if a third party issues compensation. In the case of Ricks, it was the city of Detroit. Ricks sued to keep the WICA money, but the state court said he could not keep it.
This was a bipartisan bill.
State Senator Joe Bellino from Monroe says the matter is more involved than simply paying out WICA funds to those wrongfully convicted and moving on. To be specific, after the state's fund ran low years ago, he says it's been even more critical to get money returned in the event Ricks and others also wrongfully convicted file suits against municipalities and police agencies and win.
There's no way in the world I would vote to let someone get that money and then get $7.5 million or whatever this person got in a law settlement. The state is not a huge bucket where people should be able to double dip every time there's a mistake made.
In this case, Rick's lawsuit was against the city of Detroit and two officers and accused them of falsifying evidence involving bullets back in '92. With dozens of similar cases, Mueller says it's time for WICA rules to be amended to allow former inmates to keep that money and any else they receive in a lawsuit.
No amount of money can make up for the harm of a quarter century and your entire adult life lost. So to say that the state paid you $50,000 per year, that's peanuts compared to the harm.
Also, Ricks previously pointed out that he not only lost years of his life, but the chance to watch his two daughters grow up. At this point, efforts to amend the law have not succeeded, but they remain underway. I also reached out to another attorney for Ricks for an interview, and am still awaiting a response.
And it was hard. It was hard. It took me a long time just to get somebody to believe. Once I was incarcerated, it took me a long time to find somebody to finally believe that, this happened to me, that, the police, something did happen, And like Wolf said, once the investigation started and they started seeing different things that wasn't adding up, they said, okay, we'll make an effort to help you, you know what I'm saying? Then once they started seeing other stuff, they was like, wait a minute, you don't belong in there. At that point, I didn't want to be mad and angry, but, I've been telling you this for 25 years, I didn't belong in there, you know what I'm saying? But just like he said, thankfully the prosecutors down in Detroit, they, took it upon themselves to reinvestigate, which I totally appreciate, and they got it right. They got it right.
This is a rhetorical question. I apologize. But what was prison like for you? What was
It's
your
hell.
experience?
It's not a good place. It's the most abnormal environment ever created on earth. So you have to understand there is no good days. It's all bad. You just have to make the best of bad. And that's what I did. I had to learn that, I was in the beginning, like you said in the beginning, I was bitter. I was mad. mad, I was angry. You know, then my mother passed, you know, and I gave a lawyer some money, and he subsequently ended up, you know, just disappearing with the money. So at that point, I was like, I was locked in. There was no way out. So at that point, it was like, you know, I just turned into a savage, you know, because that was the environment. And there is just, it's not a good place in there. It's not a good place. So I adapted, and you know, I persevered, and once I got myself together, everything starts and stops with self. And once I got myself together and got over the bitter and the angriness, you know, God, I prayed every day. You know, I prayed every day, but it seemed like God didn't hear me until 2008. But at that point, you know, my life was different. I was changed. You know, I wasn't bitter. I wasn't angry anymore. And I knew that once that crime lab closed, that was my out. That was the key to get me, you know, to be sitting here talking to you people today.
Did you keep hope the whole time?
I mean, it's hard to keep hope when you lose your mother and all the money, all your resources and your assets, everything just disappears. You know, but you know, I knew that, you know, my most motivating factor was I didn't want to die in there. That was the thing that kept me going. I did not want to die in there.
Okay, let's go into a little bit more of the background here. Okay, so Gary Bennett was killed outside of a Detroit restaurant. Desmond Ricks was there, but he said he was just a witness. The police didn't believe him. They seized a .38 revolver from his mother's house, and during the trial, ballistic experts looked at the bullets from the victim and the gun. They matched. Ricks went away for 25 years. But that's not the end. Ricks knew those weren't the bullets. He spent decades shouting from his cell that something wasn't right. The evidence was too pristine. Nothing changed until the Michigan Innocence Clinic got involved in 2017 to prove he was right. The original bullets didn't match his gun at all. The theory, officers had swapped the evidence. Ricks was exonerated and awarded $1.2 million by the state of Michigan. And that money came from under their Wrongful Imprisonment Compensation Act. Okay? You might see it as WICA. All right, so let's jump into the laws involved and see what's happening here. Now let's get into the alchemy of this case, okay? To understand why a man who was framed is now being ordered to pay the state back, we have to look at the exact language of the law. So this one is found at the Michigan Compiled Laws 691.1755, section 13. And it says, if after the time of an award, the plaintiff receives a sum in a civil action, the plaintiff shall reimburse the state that portion of the sum that was based on the same grounds as the award under this act. All right, so in plain English, that means it's a set-off provision. When Desmond Ricks was exonerated in 2017, he applied for compensation under the Wrongful Imprisonment Compensation Act. The state cut him a check for $1.2 million, and that's essentially $50,000 for every year he was behind bars. However, Ricks then filed a federal civil rights lawsuit against the city of Detroit and the officers who allegedly swapped the bullets, and he won that case. And that one was a win of upwards of $7.5 million for a settlement. All right, the law is designed to specifically prevent double recovery. All right. Now, from a legal standpoint, the $1.2 million he got from the state and the $7.5 million he got from the city were meant to compensate him for the same injury, the 25 years he lost. Because the city's settlement was much larger, the Michigan Court of Appeals ruled on December 22nd that the state's payment is now technically an overpayment. All right, let's talk about how the state would argue in this type of case. All right, so the state would usually argue that Ricks, if he was able to keep both, then he would be profiting from his imprisonment. Now, remember, that's the argument that the state's going to make, okay? So how does that make you feel if you hear that? Think about it. 25 years behind bars, and you're trying to take money back that you gave me? The state's own crime lab was the reason he went to prison. Should they be able to call back money just because he held specific officers accountable in another court? So what you got to think about is, look, he went to federal court and got that money. This is through a state program where he got the first set of money, the $1.2 million. All right, the biggest thing is, in a number of situations, okay, you'll have this idea of double recovery, all right? Not just dealing with Mr. Desmond Ricks, okay? So think about insurance. You and your wife both carry insurance. Let's say you both carry two separate insurances, since your jobs offer good rates, and you both carry each other. So you have two insurances that are covering you. You can't get a double recovery. Many times, if one insurance pays you out fully, they're going to ask if you receive another recovery from the same instance, then, hey, that might be beyond the original intention. All right, let me give you one more example just to better clarify this. You're in a car accident, there's an injury, and your car is totaled. Your insurance, if you have two insurances, one only covers so much, the other covers the rest. If you were to gain the same recovery, say for instance, a total loss of your car, and one insurance pays for the full car value, you can't get a second full car value because there's only one car that they're paying for. All right, does that make more sense? Next, let's move into our evidentiary standards. I'll let you know in advance that this case is at preponderance of the evidence. To understand how Desmond Ricks got into this mess and how he got out, we have to look at the 6 levels of evidence. Let's walk through them from the lowest to the highest, okay? Starting first with mere suspicion. Now, this is a hunch. This is when the police or the government don't have any proof, and also the police can't take any actions at this level. So in 1992, the police had a feeling Ricks was involved because he was at the scene. For example, an officer sees you running away from a crime scene and thinks, well, I say, he looks fairly guilty running off like that. At mere suspicion, there isn't even enough to stop you, okay? Now, what does happen is the police will go on to high alert, all right? Meaning that they're going to be looking for any violation that comes up. Mere suspicion brings the police out. All right, let's move up one level to reasonable suspicion. This is where your intuition gets a legal name, okay? It's a set of articulable facts that would suggest that there's some criminal activity happening. Good example, police find Rick's coat at the scene. Now they have enough evidence to briefly detain him and question him to see if he was involved in anything. At reasonable suspicion, the police can stop you, they can ask questions, they can briefly detain you to see if you were involved with any sort of crime that has happened. They can also pat you down and look for any weapon. All right, next, probable cause. Now this is an important one. This is where the police or the government can arrest you. All right, so this is why this one's so important. A good example, once the Detroit crime lab falsely claimed the bullets from the body matched the gun from Rick's house, the hunt became a legal justification and allowed the police to come and put him in handcuffs, arrest him, take him to trial. Perfect definition for probable cause. This is when the police have enough facts that would lead a reasonable person in their same position to say, we have enough to arrest this person, okay? Moving up one more level, preponderance of the evidence. Now we're in civil territory when people are bringing people to court over money. That's where this case is, about the state trying to recover that $1.2 million. At this level, this is the 51% rule, okay? When you bring an action, it means that it's more likely than not that your claim is true. A good example, in Rick's case, the $7.5 million civil suit against the city, his lawyers only had to prove it was more likely than not that the officer swapped the bullet in order to win that case. All right, moving up one more level, clear and convincing evidence. Now, this is a high bar. It's used for WICA claims. This level means that it's substantially likely that the claim is true. This level is for civil cases that require more receipts, okay? So in order to win these type of cases, you need about 75% of the evidence in your favor. A good example. All right, so to get that first $1.2 million from the state, Ricks had to prove he was actually innocent with a high degree of probability, and he did that by proving the bullet swap was a fact, not just a possibility. Moving up to our highest level, beyond a reasonable doubt. This is the standard used for every criminal case in America. The standard means that there is no other logical conclusion the fact finder can come to besides the defendant being guilty of the charges brought against them. A perfect example here. Originally, this is what the prosecution used to take 25 years of Mr. Desmond Ricks' life. If the jury had known about the bullets that were too perfect, too pristine, that doubt would have been a mountain. And he would have walked free way back in 1992. So remember, for this level, it takes quite a bit of evidence for the state to win these types of actions. Usually it takes anywhere from 90 to 95% of the evidence in order for the state to gain a conviction. And they have to meet this burden for every element of the crime. You can't really do that if you don't have any matching bullets. You can't prove that he actually was the one who robbed and killed somebody, okay? All right, so what's our major lesson here today? Desmond Ricks' intuition told him the evidence was fake. But it took 25 years for the legal standards to catch up to his intuition and gut feeling. While the law against double recovery is meant to protect the taxpayer's pocket, you really have to ask, at what point does reimbursement become a second injustice? Ricks didn't get 2 lives back. He only got paid for the one that was stolen from him. 25 years, y'all. What do you guys think? Should the state be allowed to take back compensation from an innocent man just because he won a separate lawsuit against the people who framed him? Let me know what you think in the comments. Don't forget to like and share the video with somebody else. We'll be back tomorrow with another lecture. Remember, this is Advocacy Alchemy, and I am Professor Ross. I'll see you tomorrow. Everybody be safe out there.
Please subscribe to Advocacy Alchemy for more lectures from Professor Ross.